Top 10 most important causes of the American Civil War. The American Civil War, a brutal and defining conflict in the history of the United States, was not the result of a single event, but rather a complex tapestry woven from decades of simmering tensions. To truly understand this pivotal moment, one must look beyond the battlefields and into the heart of the issues that tore a nation apart. Imagine a slow-burning fire, with each cause a log thrown on, incrementally increasing the heat until the inevitable inferno. From fundamental disagreements on the morality and economics of slavery to deep-seated political and cultural divisions, the path to war was a long and fraught one. This article will delve into the 10 most significant causes, exploring the intricate and often overlapping factors that led to the 4-year conflict that reshaped a nation. 1. The pervasive issue of slavery, more than just a moral debate. At the very heart of the conflict lay the institution of slavery. While it's tempting to view this as a purely moral argument, the reality was far more complex. For the South, slavery was inextricably linked to its economic prosperity. The agrarian economy, heavily reliant on crops like cotton and tobacco, was built on the backs of enslaved people. To Southern plantation owners, the abolition of slavery was not just a moral crusade, but an existential threat to their way of life and financial stability. Think of the Southern economy as a grand mansion built on a foundation of sand. That sand was slavery, and any attempt to remove it threatened to bring the entire structure crashing down. In the North, while abolitionist sentiment was growing, the economic landscape was vastly different. An industrialized economy based on free labor meant that the North's dependence on slavery was minimal. This fundamental economic divergence created a chasm between the two regions, with slavery as the ever-present fault line. The debate over the expansion of slavery into new territories only intensified this division, making compromise increasingly difficult and conflict almost inevitable. 2. Economic disparities, a tale of two economies. The economic differences between the North and the South were stark and deeply ingrained, creating a fertile ground for conflict. The North was a hub of industrialization, with a burgeoning manufacturing sector, a diverse agricultural landscape, and a robust financial system. Its economy was dynamic, attracting a steady stream of immigrants seeking opportunities in its factories and cities. This created a society that valued innovation, free labor, and economic mobility. In contrast, the South remained overwhelmingly agrarian, its economy dominated by a plantation system that was almost entirely dependent on enslaved labor. This created a rigid social hierarchy and a society that was resistant to change. The Southern economy was also less diversified, making it vulnerable to fluctuations in the price of its primary cash crop, cotton. Imagine two individuals trying to build a future together. One, a forward-thinking entrepreneur constantly seeking new ventures. The other, a traditionalist content with the old ways. The inherent friction between these two approaches mirrors the economic tensions between the North and South, where differing economic philosophies fueled a growing sense of alienation and resentment. 3. States' rights versus federal power, the enduring constitutional question. The debate over states' rights versus the power of the federal government was a constitutional question that had plagued the nation since its inception. This issue became a powerful rallying cry for the South, which feared that a strong central government would trample on its rights and, most importantly, threaten the institution of slavery. The concept of nullification, the idea that states could invalidate federal laws they deemed unconstitutional, was a cornerstone of this ideology. This can be likened to a disagreement within a family over the authority of the parents. The Southern states saw themselves as independent entities that had voluntarily joined the Union and therefore retained the right to leave it. The North, on the other hand, increasingly viewed the United States as an indivisible nation, with a federal government that had the ultimate authority. This fundamental disagreement over the nature of the Union was a ticking time bomb. and the issue of slavery provided the spark that would ultimately ignite it. The clash between these two opposing views of government power created a political environment where compromise was seen as surrender and secession as a legitimate option. 4. Westward expansion and the fight over new territories. As the United States expanded westward, the question of whether new territories would permit slavery became a major point of contention. Each new state admitted to the Union had the potential to shift the delicate balance of power in Congress between free and slave states. This led to a series of increasingly bitter political battles and fragile compromises, each one only temporarily papering over the deep divisions in the country. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, for example, admitted Missouri as a slave state but banned slavery in the northern part of the Louisiana Purchase. The Compromise of 1850 admitted California as a free state, but included the controversial Fugitive Slave Act. These compromises were like temporary ceasefires in an ongoing war, each one leaving both sides feeling as though they had given up too much. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed settlers in those territories to decide the issue of slavery for themselves, led to a period of intense violence known as Bleeding Kansas, a grim preview of the larger conflict to come. 5. The abolitionist movement, a moral crusade, gains momentum. The abolitionist movement, a diverse coalition of individuals dedicated to the immediate and unconditional end of slavery, played a crucial role in escalating tensions between the North and South. While initially a fringe movement, abolitionism gained significant momentum in the decades leading up to the war. Figures like William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, and Harriet Beecher Stowe, through their writings, speeches, and actions, brought the moral horrors of slavery to the forefront of the national consciousness. Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, in particular, had a profound impact on public opinion in the North, galvanizing anti-slavery sentiment. For many Northerners, the book transformed the abstract political issue of slavery into a deeply personal and moral one. In the South, however, abolitionists were viewed as dangerous radicals who sought to incite slave rebellions and destroy their way of life. The growing influence of the abolitionist movement created an atmosphere of fear and paranoia in the South, further entrenching their defense of slavery and making any form of reconciliation increasingly unlikely. 6. The Dred Scott decision, a Supreme Court ruling that fueled the flames. The 1857 Supreme Court decision in the case of Dred Scott versus Sanford was a legal bombshell that had a devastating impact on the already fragile state of the nation. Dred Scott, an enslaved man who had lived in free territories, sued for his freedom. The Supreme Court, in a sweeping and highly controversial ruling, declared that African Americans were not citizens and therefore had no rights in federal court. Furthermore, the court ruled that the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional, effectively opening all federal territories to slavery. This decision was a stunning victory for the South and a crushing blow to the anti-slavery movement. It seemed to confirm the worst fears of many Northerners, that a pro-slavery conspiracy, often referred to as the slave power, controlled the federal government. The ruling invalidated the central platform of the newly formed Republican Party, which was dedicated to preventing the expansion of slavery. By stripping away the possibility of a political compromise, the Dred Scott decision pushed the nation one giant step closer to the brink of war. 7. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, an act of radical abolitionism. In 1859, the radical abolitionist John Brown led a small group of followers in a raid on the Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. His plan was to seize weapons and incite a massive slave uprising. The raid ultimately failed, and Brown was captured, tried for treason, and executed. However, the event had a profound and polarizing effect on the country. In the North, many abolitionists hailed Brown as a martyr, a heroic figure who had sacrificed his life for the cause of freedom. In the South, he was seen as a terrorist, a dangerous fanatic who embodied the North's supposed desire to destroy the Southern way of life. The raid on Harper's Ferry intensified the South's fears of slave insurrections and further solidified their belief that they could no longer safely remain in the Union. It was a stark and violent illustration of the deep and irreconcilable chasm that had opened between the two sections of the country. 8. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, the final straw. The election of Abraham Lincoln as the 16th President of the United States in 1860 was the immediate catalyst for the secession of the Southern states. Lincoln was the candidate of the Republican Party, which had been founded on the principle of preventing the expansion of slavery into the Western territories. Although Lincoln himself was a moderate on the issue of slavery, promising not to interfere with it in the states where it already existed, his election was seen by the South as a direct threat to their peculiar institution. For Southern leaders, the election of a president who was openly opposed to the expansion of slavery was a clear indication that they had lost their political power and influence in the federal government. They believed that it was only a matter of time before the Republican Party would move to abolish slavery altogether. Within weeks of Lincoln's victory, South Carolina seceded from the Union, and several other Southern states soon followed suit. The election of 1860 was the culmination of decades of growing sectionalism and political polarization, the final act in a long and tragic drama that would soon erupt into war. 9. Sectionalism, a deepening cultural and social divide. Beyond the political and economic disagreements, a deep and widening cultural and social divide, known as sectionalism, separated the North and the South. The two regions had developed into distinct societies with different values, customs, and social structures. The North was a more dynamic and diverse society, with a growing middle class and a strong emphasis on education and reform. The South, on the other hand, was a more hierarchical and traditional society, with a small, wealthy planter class at the top and a large population of enslaved people at the bottom. These cultural differences were reflected in everything from literature and religion to family life and social customs. Northerners increasingly viewed the South as a backward and immoral society, mired in the evils of slavery. Southerners, in turn, saw the North as a greedy and materialistic society, devoid of the honor and chivalry that they believed defined their own culture. This growing sense of cultural alienation made it increasingly difficult for the two regions to find common ground and fostered a sense of us versus them that made conflict all the more likely. 10. The failure of political compromise, a system on the brink of collapse. Ultimately, the American Civil War was a product of the failure of the American political system to resolve the deep-seated issues that divided the nation. For decades, political leaders had managed to hold the country together through a series of fragile compromises. However, by the 1850s, the political will to compromise had all but disappeared. The rise of a new generation of more radical and uncompromising politicians in both the North and the South made it increasingly difficult to find a middle ground. The breakdown of the national political parties, particularly the Whig Party, and the emergence of the purely sectional Republican Party further exacerbated the situation. The political system, which had once served as a vehicle for resolving disputes, had become a battleground for sectional interests. Each side viewed the other with suspicion and hostility, and the language of compromise was replaced by the rhetoric of confrontation. In the end, the failure of political leadership and the collapse of the political process left the nation with no other option but to resolve its differences on the battlefield.